All right, so India is making this really bold move, right? They're bidding to host the 2030 Commonwealth Games. And at first glance, you think, okay, great, it's a chance to shine on the world stage. But here's the thing. When you dig just a little deeper, you realize hosting these giant events is almost always a financial nightmare. So that begs the question, why on earth is India so eager to throw a party that it seems almost nobody else wants to come to?
And hey, I'm not exaggerating here. I mean, we're talking about the 100th anniversary of the Games. You'd think countries would be lining up, but it's down to just two nations, India and Nigeria. So what is it? What's scaring everybody else away? I mean, check this out. Just a few months ago, we had about 5 countries seriously in the running. And today, poof, we're down to just 2. That is a super fast exodus, and it really all boils down to one single thing.
You guessed it, money. We're talking about those eye-watering, totally unpredictable, and just astronomical costs that come with hosting an event this big. Okay, let's look at Canada for a second. They were a serious contender, right? But then the government of Alberta got a look at the projected price tag. We're talking over 1.9 billion US dollars. And they just pulled out. They basically said, yeah, this is not a good deal for our taxpayers. And honestly, you can't really blame them, especially when you look at what happened in Australia. So, the Victoria province in Australia. They were all set to host the 2026 Games. But they had to pull the plug when their initial budget, which was already a hefty $1.77 billion, more than doubled to a staggering $4.77 billion. That's not just a little budget oopsie, that's a full-blown financial black hole. And here's a really big reason why these costs are just spiraling out of control for host cities. You see, the money from sponsorships and media deals, it's just not what it used to be. Not even close. Look at Manchester back in 2002. They managed to recover almost half their operating costs. Now, fast forward to the more recent games in Gold Coast and Birmingham, and that number plummets to under 20%. So what does that mean? It means the taxpayers, yep, you and me, are left on the hook for over 90% of the bill. Okay, so with all of these massive financial red flags waving everywhere, you have to ask, why is India still in this race? Why is it willing to take on a risk that so many other developed countries are literally running away from?
Well, the classic argument you always hear is that, these events are a huge long-term investment. They leave behind brand new infrastructure, they create thousands of jobs, tourism explodes, small businesses boom. I mean, on paper, it sounds like a total win-win. But does the reality ever actually match the hype? Let's take a look at one of the most famous examples to find out. I'm talking about the Sydney 2000 Olympics. It's pretty much the perfect case study for seeing the giant gap between that promised economic boom and, well, the harsh financial reality. So, before the event, a big government-backed study came out with this incredibly bold promise that the Games would deliver over $7 billion in benefits to the local economy. And of course, that's a number that dazzled everybody and made all the massive spending seem totally worth it. But what happened after all the parties ended and the confetti was swept away? And here's the real kicker. A follow-up study, which, by the way, are super rare for a reason, found the exact opposite happened. The Olympics didn't deliver benefits. It actually reduced consumption by about $3.7 billion. It wasn't a boom, it was a total bust. So, how on earth did that happen? Where did that promise go so wrong? Well, the first reason is a classic economics term called the crowding out effect. And it's actually pretty simple. The Olympics didn't really create a new wave of tourism, it just replaced the old one. You see, the regular tourists who would have come to Sydney anyway were totally scared off by the crazy high prices and the insane crowds. So instead of getting an economic boost, you just end up swapping one group of tourists for another. And then you have what's called opportunity cost. I mean, that $4.5 billion Sydney spent on the Games, it didn't just appear out of thin air. That was real taxpayer money. Money that could have gone into building schools or hospitals or better public transport, things that have a real lasting impact on people's lives. But instead, a lot of it went into building giant stadiums that, in many cases, are just gathering dust today. Okay, so if the whole economic argument for hosting is, let's be honest, pretty shaky, then what is the real reason India is so determined to win this bid? It's becoming clear it's not about the money. It has to be about something else. Something they see as much more valuable. Here's a good way to think about it. Owning a home isn't just about the utility of having a roof over your head, right? For a lot of people, it's a statement. It's about status. It's a marker of success that tells the world, hey, I've arrived. And that is exactly what India is trying to do here, but on the global stage. So yeah, this isn't really about profit. It's all about prestige. This is a very calculated soft power play. Hosting the 100th anniversary of the Games is India's chance to step into the global spotlight and basically shout, we've arrived. It's a way to build visibility as it pushes to become one of the world's top economies, spark investment back home in cities like Ahmedabad, and hopefully inspire a whole new generation of Indian athletes. But, and this is a big but, for this huge gamble to actually pay off, India absolutely has to learn from the ghosts of games past. It has to look at both the successes and, more importantly, the failures. Because how it hosts these games is going to be every bit as important as the decision to host them in the first place. And really, when you look at it, India has two very clear paths to choose from. On the one hand, there's the warning from its own past, the 2010 Delhi Games, an event that was just completely marred by financial scandals, terrible organization, and a cost overrun of, get this, over 1,400%. Or it can follow the blueprint from cities like Glasgow and Birmingham. They focused on legacy, they avoided building those white elephant venues, and they actually reinvested their budget surplus back into the community. So at the end of the day, the ultimate question really isn't just about profit versus prestige. It's about whether India can actually have both. Can it successfully play this high-stakes prestige game without the public having to pay an absolutely unacceptable price? Because while the potential rewards are massive, so are the risks. And if this billion-dollar gamble doesn't pay off, we know exactly who will be left footing the bill.